About 80 days, and God spoke to him directly and said, what I want is a sanctuary, a place that I can dwell amongst my people. He asked him to give a free will offering and to help build the sanctuary, and he asked for specific things: gold, silver, copper, precious stones, other things, linens, in order to build the tabernacle. And the people wanted also to have a relationship with God. And they gave so much. Moses had to tell them to stop because they gave so much.
Yes.
And so this is when God just said, I want to dwell with my people. So the tabernacle itself was in the center of the camp. And Israel was all the way around the outside. Aaron, Moses, the sons were right outside this gate, okay, in order to accept the sacrifices that were coming. And so the tabernacle was built around 1440 BC and used for about 400 years until the time of King Solomon. Okay, and then we'll come right over here. This is the altar of sacrifice. Okay, it's 5 by 5 cubits and 3 cubits deep. Okay, it really deals with substitutionary atonement. Something else had to die so that I could live.
Yes.
Okay, it was unquestionable. You can't die for me. You have sinned. I can't die for you. You have sinned. So what could they use to do the sacrifice? It would have been an animal, because an animal couldn't sin. Although I think my dog did.
Okay. In somewhere. Yes.
All right. He couldn't sin. So it was the life of the animal that was taken so that it would cover the sins of the individual.
Yes.
Okay? When you think about sin itself, it's like God's standard is right there, and we're an arrow. And we shoot toward God's standard and we miss.
Yes.
Okay? That is sin. Okay? So something has to happen. So the reason we study the tabernacle is because God was showing them how a sinful people could be with a holy God. And so when we come into the courtyard, the courtyard itself is 50 cubits by 100 cubits. All right? It's covered in a curtain of white linen.
Yes.
Still showing the separation that needs to exist between a sinful people and a holy God. Okay? But then he was telling them how to approach him. So how can that happen? The sacrifice would be brought in. The sacrifice would be slain. The blood would have been put on the horns and sprinkled around the outside of the altar. Okay? But before the priest could accept the offering, he first had to go to the laver. And here is the laver. And at the laver, this is where the they would ceremonially wash their hands and their feet before they could accept the sacrifice. Now, can water wash away sin? No. Leviticus 17:11 says that the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I give it to you upon the altar for your soul, for the covering of sin. Okay? And so they had to wash their hands, they had to wash their feet before they could accept the sacrifice. They also had to wash their hands and feet before they could even enter the Holy of Holies. All of this was done in order to approach a holy God. Do you remember Adam and Eve, when they were cast out of the garden,
Mm-hmm.
which direction were they cast out? They were cast out to the east. Okay? The tabernacle itself is east-west facing. So if Adam and Eve were cast out to the east, that's telling us that the direction to God is west.
Yes.
That's why we have the gate to enter is from the east going west, where we come to God Himself. Okay? The construction, this is 10 cubits high. Okay? There would have been 4 coverings. One covering would have been one of an animal which they really don't know what it is. It could have been porpoise. It could have been badger skin. It could have been a number of things. The second one would have been ram skins dyed red. Okay, when you think about the Messiah, it represents His blood. The next one would have been goat hair, and the third one would have been colorful linen. All right, all of this stuff came from Egypt. Okay, when you think about them being slaves, being able to just make brick, how did they know how to do this?
Yes.
Okay, God said that He put His Spirit into 2 people. It was Bezalel and I think his name was Ohijah. And it says in Exodus 31, that I will put my Spirit into them and tell them how to do this, how to do all of this. In the same way, when God asks us to do something, He puts it into our minds.
Amen.
He prepares us
Yes, He will
for the
always
task that He wants to have happen, right? So that happens all the time. And so those 2 individuals were put in charge in order to build the altar of sacrifice, the laver, and all the products that are within it. Mm-hmm. This was made of copper. Mm-hmm. The laver was made of copper. It's one of the few things that we have that we don't know the dimensions of.
Yeah.
Okay? So this was our understanding of what it might look like. But there again, as I said, we have we don't know if it was taller, whether it was square, whether it had 2 levels or not. Mm-hmm. But there's all sorts of depictions of what it might be.
I see.
The first curtain separates the Jews from this area, which would be just with Levites.
The Levites, yes.
Okay, the Levites were put in charge once the whole thing was built.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a Levite, but you may not be a Levitical priest. But if you were a Levitical priest, you were a Levite. All right. So those are the 2 things that we have to understand. Are they done in this one? Now we're in the Holy of Holies, and only the priests would be allowed in here.
Yeah.
And the first thing that you would have is the menorah. The menorah itself, we know, is made out of 1 talent of gold, which is about 75 pounds of gold. So it'd be worth quite a bit.
But it's heavy.
The walls would have been plated in pure gold, inside and out. Mm-hmm. When you think of, there's over, you're very welcome. There's over 2.5 tons of gold. There's over 5 tons of silver. There's over 2.5 tons of copper, just in what you see here. Some of the things would have been carted, but some of the things would have to be carried.
Yes.
The table of showbread is one that would be carried. Mm-hmm. This had, we know that it had a center stem. We don't have actual dimensions of the menorah.
Okay.
But we know it had a center stem, and it had 3 branches coming out besides. 7 lamps across the top, all of which had to be filled with oil.
Wow.
All which had wicks that had to be trimmed. This was the only light in this room.
Wow.
But with golden walls,
It will reflect.
it would have reflected quite well. Okay? Directly across is the table of showbread. This was made of acacia wood, layered in gold. Okay? On it would have been 12 loaves of bread. If you went to somebody's house and you saw 12 plates, 12 chairs, everything set up for 12 people, you would expect 12 people were coming,
Yes.
right? In the same way, 12 loaves of bread, one for
12
each of the tribes of Israel.
I see. I get it.
So once a week on Shabbat, the priest would come in to the house of God and eat at God's table before God, because that would be the holy place. Okay? So showing God's covenant, God's relationship, God's desire to meet with his people. And high priest and the regular priest.
Okay.
If you notice on the high priest, there's an ephod.
Yeah.
On his shoulders were the 12 children of Israel.
Ah, okay.
Okay? Six,
God, Esher,
six,
Israel,
six
Issachar.
breastplate. Okay? Each stone is the representing the tribes.
Okay.
Now, this was his worker, but he had the responsibility. He had the responsibility before God to represent the nation of Israel.
Wow.
And he wore the nation of Israel on his shoulders
Yes.
and close to his heart. Okay? Because the responsibility was his. Once a year he went into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Okay? It was at that point that he would take incense. Okay? The fire would come from the altar of sacrifice and put it on and what he would do, he would take the fire, the coals, put it on a little plate and slide it underneath.
Because no one will enter.
And it would be filled with smoke. He would then take off this garb
Yes.
and come in as a common servant. Okay? He would not come in all of his glory.
Yeah, okay.
All right? Because he was representing the people. Okay? And so only white he would wear.
Okay. Enter.
Yep, on his head there would have been a band that said, in gold, that would have said, Holy is the Lord.
Ah, okay. Holy is the Lord. I see.
Okay? All right. So he's got the incense inside. The room has just filled with smoke. He's taken off his clothes to just wear white.
Yes.
And then he goes in. But he also goes in with two sacrifices.
Yes.
One for himself, because he's sinful, and one for the nation of Israel.
Cherubim.
In the Holy of Holies, we have the Ark of the Covenant, which is the box below. You have the mercy seat, which is that covering. Two cherubim, one on each side, with the wings overshadowing. If we were in a temple, there would be an idol there that they would worship.
Yes, but
Okay? But in this case, God said, I will appear to you
in there.
above the mercy seat and between the two cherubim. So what's there? Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay? Except
when God
the Shekinah glory of God. Because he said, I will be represented by nothing made by man.
Amen.
Okay? And so he's there in all of his glory. All right? Inside the ark would have been the tablets of stone. Okay?
Oh, wow.
A bowl of manna
Wow.
and the rod of Aaron. The stone representing the covenant that God made with the
Yes.
children of Israel. The manna represents his provision. Okay? The manna came down from heaven.
Yes.
Okay? What else came down from heaven? Jesus himself.
Yes.
Yes.
Jesus.
He came down from heaven. So he was
Amen.
also our provision.
Yes.
Okay? And the rod of Aaron
Rod of
representing his
Aaron.
authority. Okay? So that's what would have been in the ark. The cherubim, made out of one piece of pure gold.
Wow.
And and in the temple, later on, when Jesus died on the cross, it would have been this veil that would have been torn from top to
It
bottom.
went down. Yes. Wow.
Okay? Again, opening up the way for us to be with him. Because now, we're his house.
Yes, we
Okay.
are blessed now.
And
living in
Knock on
us.
in our lives
yes,
already.
we're his house.
No.
And better is the builder than
Amen.
just the house. Right?
Amen. Yes.
So, That's our Lord Jesus Christ.
Thank you.